The crown prince of the Yen prince's mansion, Xiao, is naturally bold and free-spirited, with reckless behavior. Every once in a while, he will be chased by the Yen prince holding a ruler and climbing over trees and walls. This is something that Mansheng Kyoto knows. But what the outside world doesn't know is that the ruler in the hand of the king of Yen has been swung for more than a decade, but has never truly fallen behind. I don't even know that the cynical little demon king is actually a stunning daughter. Xiao climbed the wall for the first time to the North Prince's mansion in the neighboring town when he was 5 years old, and for more than 10 years, he used that wall as his own doorstep. Pei Yi, the crown prince of the northern prince of the small town, came to the capital as a hostage. He was too pitiful to be alone. She brings a big bag of food for people when she has something to do and nothing to do. The master of the Imperial Academy deliberately ignored Pei Yi and did not teach him well. Under the guise of having someone help her with her homework, she climbed over the wall all day to make up for missed classes. Watching little Radish Head finally grow into a posthumous young master like a banished fairy, the world is in chaos, war is raging, and the people are filled with grievances. The wine and meat in Jumen smell bad, and there are frozen bones on the road. The dog emperor is invisible to all, always aware of conspiracies and power checks, and even wants to destroy her whole family and the prince of Zhenbei whom she has worked hard to cultivate. Xiao. The world's winds and clouds have emerged from our generation, and we are chatting and laughing about our imperial ambitions. Empress keywords of the novel. The crown prince cannot be a woman without a pop-up window. The crown prince cannot be a woman. Download the complete text of the text, and the latest chapter of The Crown Prince Cannot Be a Woman. Chapter 1. The Crown Prince She Runs Over the Wall Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Crown Prince She Runs Over the Wall Again. The sunny spring day breeze is fragrant. In a quiet and elegant courtyard in the northeast corner of the Yen Prince's mansion, lush trees and dazzling flowers bloom. A small cluster of clear springs flowed out from the gap between the rockeries in the courtyard, and finally merged into the pond where the precious Lulan koi were kept, emitting a gurgling sound of flowing water. Occasionally, the maids and servants passing through the courtyard all slowed down their steps, fearing that they might disturb the white-clothed young master leaning on a branch and resting on the peach blossom tree beside them. The spring breeze brushes against my face, and the sunshine is gentle. The delightful flowing water intertwines with the crisp chirping of birds, giving people a sense of tranquility over time. Unfortunately, such a harmonious scene was quickly destroyed by a gasping shout, "It's not good anymore. Crown Prince, it's not good anymore." While returning to the cage feeling interrupted by someone, Xiao casually draped his arm over his forehead to shield himself from the sun and let it fall. The broad flowing clouds and sleeves brushed over the branches, and the petals fell to the ground in a flurry. She lazily sat up straight, using only a warm jade hairpin to casually roll up a loose bun. Those peach blossom eyes, which appear particularly affectionate when they smile, still carry a hint of newly awakened drowsiness. "Your crown prince is very good, why are you making such a fuss?" "Wang, my lord." Before the servant who came to report the news could finish speaking, another angry shout came from outside the courtyard. "Where is that bastard? I didn't learn well at a young age, and now I dare to spend the night in the incense-picking tower. See if I don't break her dog leg." Amidst the roaring sound, there were still some chaotic movements that could be faintly heard, one of which resembled the wind brought by the ruler while her father was walking. Xiao was startled, and the remaining drowsiness disappeared instantly. She stood up proficiently, leaped lightly on the branches, and flipped over the courtyard wall without looking back, leaving only a slightly hasty sentence. "Just say I went to review my homework with the Prince of Zhenbei." Servant. The Prince of Zhenbei, who watched helplessly as a person flew down from his own wall, said. Accustomed to it, Pei Yi withdrew his gaze and continued to carve the piece of wood in his hand. The tone of his greeting sounded very calm. "Here we go." The teacher is coming to check the homework in less than half an hour. Can't I come now? The courtyard wall between the Yan prince's mansion and the Zhenbei prince's mansion has been overturned by Yun Xiao for 12 years. Her father swung his ruler and searched for her all over the house, which was not just a matter of 1 or 2 days. Yun Xiao never knew what embarrassment was in front of Pei Yi. She walked casually across from Pei Yi and sat down, not caring about the somewhat desolate courtyard that even in spring. I picked up the tea set on the stone table casually and poured myself a cup first. After drinking up, he finally had time to look at the wooden carving in his hand. If your Buddha statue is a birthday gift for the Empress, why not give it to me? Anyway, that day will definitely not be peaceful, and whether the birthday banquet can still be held smoothly is a question. Your gift or not, the Empress probably won't care either. When I carved this Buddha statue, with every blade and chisel, there were no blessings, but there were many devout curses. Pei Yi stopped his movements and looked up at her calmly. Do you want it? Let's just forget about it. With a swoosh, Yun Xiao shook off the folding fan in his hand, and his wrist moved slightly, as if he was about to fan away the bad luck. Your mouth is very poisonous. I want to live a few more years. The new book is open for updates. I'll put some questions that may be asked here for now. Okay, first of all, there is no suspense about the 1v1 double cleanliness he and then one. For the convenience of everyone's reading, the female protagonist mentioned in the text will use the word she next to the female character, but as long as I haven't explicitly written it, I still don't know the female protagonist's daughter, too. To avoid some strange speculations during the reading process. The male and female leads have no blood relationship, no blood relationship, no blood relationship. I'll say the important thing 3 times first. Omega equals 3. Aerial background. Do not substitute for any dynasty. Please do not pay attention to historical details. Thank you. *3, hand heart gesture. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Undercurrent surges. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Undercurrent surges. Yun Xiao has a loose personality and is accustomed to being talkative, which Pei Yi has been accustomed to for over a decade. He lowered his eyes and carefully put the sharp carving knife in his hand into the box. His silk-like black long hair was neatly draped behind him, and the silver hair crown on his head tied his bun tightly and meticulously. That looked very simple, and even some simple ink-colored robe could not conceal the nobility that was revealed in his bones. A person is like repairing a bamboo robe or a sailboat shadow, probably referring to him. But such a person was raised by her. Yun Xiao raised his eyebrows lightly, and the movement of shaking the folding fan also carried a hint of pride. Did you rest at the fragrance building last night? Not paying attention to the rich emotional changes in Yun Xiao's eyes, Pei Yi rubbed the closed wooden box with her fingertips and lightly flicked her eyes. But it's related to the Queen's birthday banquet. It's related, it's not related either. The frequency of the folding fan in hand has noticeably slowed down. Speaking of what she just found out last night, even with Yun Xiao's cynical nature, there was a hint of solemnity in her eyebrows. The envoy of Xiling Kingdom arrived in the capital early yesterday disguised as a Xiling merchant. In order to cover up his identity, he even went to the fragrance-picking tower to have fun. I also inquired for a long time before realizing that the one on the dragon chair would secretly receive them today, Xiling. This news was really unexpected for Pei Yi. After all, the abilities of the current emperor are mediocre. During his 10 years in power, Dashing is no longer the leader of the powerful 5 countries. On the contrary, Xiling Kingdom has become increasingly powerful in recent years, with various frictions on the border adjacent to Dashing in the past 2 years. Some people in the court have long speculated that Xiling Kingdom was trying to test Dashing and intended to go to war. The Empress's 43rd birthday is not necessarily a big birthday. Unfortunately, both Xiling and Bailey sent envoys to congratulate them. If it weren't for some other purpose, who would believe it? In such a situation, the emperor actually had to secretly meet with the envoys of Xiling. Is it for Uncle Yen? That's about it. Yun Xiao lowered his eyes and a sarcastic curve curved his lips. My father is probably the only one who can make both the Holy Emperor and Xiling Kingdom fear at the same time today. When Emperor Gaozu conquered these thousands of miles of land and saved the people from fire and water, the former crown prince accompanied his elderly family to provide advice and advice, one person, one horse, one long spear, and the one who has achieved great fame and authority across the world is the King of Yen. But no one expected that the crown prince would die young later. The King of Yen was forced to hand over his military power and idle at home. The last one to inherit the throne is the mediocre in both civil and martial arts, but the only one who can be called the current saint who has put in a lot of effort in playing with power. In recent years, China's national strength has gradually weakened, and neighboring countries have been constantly taking various actions, big and small. There was a voice in the court that wanted the emperor to reinstate the King of Yen. Unfortunately, the Dog Emperor's mind was filled with the fear that the King of Yen might achieve great success. Not only did he not listen to advice, but now he even managed to secretly contact the Western Ling Kingdom. I'm afraid this time. Yun Zhao's voice paused, and the two of them turned their heads together to look at the wall in the southeast corner of the courtyard. As expected, a restless and furry head quickly popped up over there. Being caught climbing over the wall, the owner of that head not only did not feel guilty, but also gave Pei Yi a stern glare. Wow! I knew it was you who kidnapped my big brother again. Yun Xiao. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Pei Yi and I both fell into the water at the same time. Who did you save? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Pei Yi and I both fell into the water at the same time. Who did you save? Yun Feng is 3 years younger than Yun Xiao, probably because he was born with a special affinity for her. At the moment of birth, a tiny little thing was crying loudly in the delivery room. However, as soon as Yun Xiao left, he stopped crying and began to laugh foolishly with his mouth wide open. After growing up to be able to walk, she even transformed into Yun Zhao's little tail, wishing she could stick to her side for 12 hours a day. Naturally, Pei Yi, who often competed with him for his big brother, became the object of hostility towards Yun Feng from childhood to adulthood. When two people meet, they pinch each other. For over a decade, there have been no exceptions. Just like now, while Yun Feng climbed over the wall, his sleeves had already been rolled up. Pei Yi, let me tell you, Dong. Watching my own silly little brother jump off the wall and then fall into the pit with a thud without a trace, even Yun Xiao was startled. Fortunately, in the next moment, Yun Feng's furious screams and curses came from the pit again. Pei Yi, you bastard, how dare you plan on me, young master? You're overthinking it. Pei Yi remained motionless like a mountain, with a gentle breeze brushing over his shoulders and his ink hair fluttering lightly. As the sleeves and robes sway, they are carried with ease and composure. That's what I had my servants dig when I was preparing to plant flowers. You fart. Yun Feng is impatient. Who dug such a deep pit for planting flowers, and deliberately concealed a layer on top? If there is a problem with the flower seeds, it's better to turn it into a trap. Pei Yi took a sip of tea, lowered her eyes, and her thick long eyelashes lightly covered her eyelids, casting two green shadows, adorned on his delicate face. His eyebrows and eyes, like ink paintings from distant mountains, reflect indifference, as if all of this had nothing to do with him. Only Yun Xiao, who was very close to him, could barely catch a faint smile from his partially covered ink eyes. He spoke slowly and added. Prevent thieves. Yun Feng. This dog is still calling him a thief. Climbing out of the pit with a black face and patting the soil on his body, turning his face, he saw that Yun Xiao was still sitting in the same spot without moving. Yun Feng felt even more aggrieved in his heart. Brother, if you don't even help me say a few words, just watch this dog bully me. You say it. If one day Pei Yi and I fall into the water together, who will you save first? No one will save. Yun Xiao raised his hand and lightly tapped Yun Feng's head with a folding fan as he walked by. The moonlight white sleeve robe carried a faint peach blossom fragrance. Both of you know how to swim, do you need me, who doesn't know how to swim, to cause trouble? It's not tiring to argue when meeting helplessly shaking his head, Xiao skillfully began to shift the topic. Did you see Dad before you came over just now? No, but I have asked the people in the mansion and they all said that after Dad left from you, he went straight to his Jiamu garden. Yunfeng pursed her lips, knowing that this was the usual routine of her elder brother. She continued with her words. My mother said that my father met people from the Mahist school when he had nothing to do at home due to the transfer of military power, which led to his hobby of chopping wood, but as I watched him cherish those woods even more than his son, I couldn't imagine how heroic and majestic he looked on the battlefield when he was young. The mechanism techniques of the Mahist school are exquisite and unpredictable, not just about cutting wood. Xiao calculated the time and estimated that Mr. Lin should also be at the mansion by now. Turning his gaze to Pei Yi, he lightly raised his eyebrows and reached out his hand with familiarity. Did you finish the homework assigned to you yesterday? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. What's there to eavesdrop on? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. What's there to eavesdrop on? Taking the homework that Pei Yi deliberately imitated her handwriting to complete, when Xiao climbed back over the wall on the same path, he indeed saw his book boy Yin pouting his buttocks, wishing he could directly hit his ear to the other end of the wall. That foolish appearance made Xiao's brain twitch. What about eavesdropping? Ouch! The sudden sound above her head startled Xin, causing her head to bump into a relatively low branch. Looking up, he saw that the person coming was Xiao, and he even rubbed himself a little wrongly. Isn't it just to go find Prince Pei and ask him to write your homework for you? This matter has been going on since your first day of study. What's there to eavesdrop on? He waited here for a while, and just now he seemed to hear some footsteps, wondering if his own crown prince had returned, and had already walked to the wall. He then stepped forward to hear more clearly. Who would have thought that he was caught on the spot just as he made a move? After muttering a few gloomy words in a low voice, Xin finally remembered his purpose of coming to find Xiao. Prince, Mr. Lin has already arrived at the front yard. Got it, I'll change my clothes first. Xiao stayed overnight at the fragrance-picking tower last night. When she returned in the morning, she found out that her father must have walked aggressively towards her yard again. So she decided to lie down on the peach tree branch by the wall and take a nap for a while. I haven't changed clothes yet. Mr. Lin is a great scholar of the time. Xiao has been taught by him since childhood, and his respect for the old gentleman is genuine, so he naturally does not want to be impolite in front of him. She handed the roll of paper filled with homework to Xin's hand, and as she walked, she instructed. Please go to the study to rest for a moment, teacher. I will be there soon. No. Xin put down her hand rubbing her head, bent over to take the volume of homework, and ran slowly towards the front yard. In the quiet study, the sunlight filtered through the hollowed-out carved window and cast small speckled shadows in the corner of the desk. In the bronze three-legged golden beast incense burner, there is still a concentrated and still incense burning. The old man, dressed in a broad Confucian robe and wrapped his gray hair with only a wooden hairpin, was quietly watching the article in his hand. When Xiao walked around the screen from outside, the old man happened to have finished reading the last word of the article. As those wise and peaceful eyes looked at the student who had expended the most effort, a faint smile slowly appeared. What about another one? Did you finish reading that one so quickly? Skillfully walking to the desk, Xiao accurately found the article she had written herself from the pile of messy waste paper at hand, and handed it to the old man with both hands. Respectfully, there is a hint of casualness, and casualness, there is also a hint of intimacy. Exactly, teacher, could you please take a look at which one is better? These two articles have different entry points, which one is about? As usual, Mr. Lin first carefully reviewed the two articles she submitted, and then taught some new content. The study, adorned with a faint scent of sandalwood, is peaceful and peaceful, with only occasional sounds of scrolls flipping, debates among the elderly and young around a core argument. Since learning the news last night, Xiao has been feeling heavy, as if he has also found a moment of peace in this study. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. What about the current prosperity? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. What about the current prosperity? Unfortunately, there is no need to think too much about time like this, it is still too short. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the end of today's lecture. Lin Yanqing put down the scripture in his hand and looked at Xiao in silence for a moment. Suddenly, he spoke slowly and asked, "What do you think of the current prosperity?" Xiao, who was commenting on the last line of the scripture, paused his grip on the pen and pondered. Students have heard that there is a white ant in this world that likes to gnaw on wood. If someone's house is affected by termites and the owner is not careful enough, perhaps they will have to wait until the wooden utensils in the house are eaten into empty shells before they can notice any abnormalities. In the eyes of students today, Dasheng is like a magnificent and majestic building, with a shiny exterior, but in fact, its interior has long been devoured by termites, shaky and on the verge of collapse. The last few words were not directly stated by Xiao, but the meaning behind her words was already expressed very clearly. Lin Yanqing could tell that Xiao's tone was devoid of awe towards the current emperor of Dasheng. He sighed lightly, his eyes that seemed to have seen through the vicissitudes of the world, with a look of compassion for this world. If this world is really chaotic, what should you do? Students have no ambitions, they are only willing to do their best to protect the health of the people I love for a lifetime. Xiao's voice was gentle, and when he said these words, he also stood up and respectfully bowed to Mr. Lin as a Confucian scholar. But Lin Yanqing knew that Xiao had already confessed to him in advance. In her seemingly calm words of not fighting or grabbing, only willing to sit and watch the flowers bloom and fall slowly in the idle courtyard, watching the clouds roll and relax, there is a hint of blood and rain. If possible, Lin Yanqing also hopes that the disciple in front of him who has been taught by him since childhood can study knowledge with peace of mind, without paying attention to the struggles filled with various desires and calculations. The position of the people in the Kuyen prince's mansion destined that they would not be able to escape the center of that vortex, let alone Xiao's identity. It's okay. Lin Yanqing smiled with relief and took off a very antique-looking jade plaque from his waist, handing it to Xiao. It's difficult even if you don't want to get involved in this situation. No one can predict where you will go in the future. This jade plaque has been carried by my teacher for decades, and many people have recognized it. Perhaps one day, you will be able to use it. This can be considered the last help I can give you before this chaotic world comes. Teacher. Xiao was holding the jade plaque in his hand and wanted to say something more. Lin Yanqing had already slowly stepped out of the study, only facing her back and casually waving his hand, indicating that there was no need to send him off. The remaining Xiao still stood in the study, dazed by the jade plaque in his hand. The Crown Prince. Outside, Ziyin, who had been waiting for Xiao to leave for a long time, tentatively knocked on the open door and searched for her figure by the door. Prince, should someone bring your lunch? No need. Come to my senses and carefully put away that jade plaque. Xiao walked out of the inner room with his usual expression. My father is still in Xiaomu Garden. Yes. Ziyin nodded, revealing a hesitant expression. I clearly want to say it, but I'm afraid of being beaten. Xiao gave him a displeased glance. If you want to speak, speak quickly. Oh, then I said it. End of this chapter. Can we talk about chapter 6? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Can we talk about chapter 6? Ziyin chuckled and quickly wrapped his hands around his head, speaking at lightning speed. If you want to go to Xiaomu Garden, Crown Prince, I suggest it's better not to. I heard the prince is quite angry today. He saws wood directly with a big knife. If you go over now, you will be chased and run around like a dog. Xiao. She shouldn't have been so kind. you should let Xian's mouth fly in front of you and his brain chase after you to suffocate yourself. The folding fan in his hand spun a beautiful fan flower in the palm of his hand, and the fan bones that were finally gathered together accurately hit the area that Xian couldn't cover with his hands. Yun Xiao sneered. Stand here and recite Xian is a dog 100 times. If you can't finish it, don't have lunch. Xian's grinning face collapsed in an instant. Watching as Yun Xiao walked away leisurely, he raised his hand in frustration and slapped himself, wanting to cry without tears. Why can't I control my broken mouth? Xiamu Garden is located in the westernmost corner of the Yan Prince's mansion, which was renovated by the Yan Prince over a decade ago. Although the location of this courtyard is off, its area is quite large. As soon as Yun Xiao entered the courtyard door, a wooden little bird fluttered towards her. The wings made of thin wooden pieces can still be heard clattering with each flap. Dare you come over, little bunny? The king of Yan, who was chasing the little wooden bird out, glared at Yun Xiao and shouted angrily. His voice was so loud that he could hear it clearly from half a distance from the royal palace. He grabbed the small wooden bird with one hand and Yun Xiao's wrist with the other, and on the way to the courtyard, he even kicked over 2 wooden frames in a row. Anyone who listens to the commotion feels that the king of Yan is really angry this time. He will definitely catch Yun Xiao and beat him up. However, no one could have imagined that. In fact, they thought the enraged king of Yan would drag Yun Xiao into the inner courtyard, but his face instantly changed. Xiao, do you think daddy's little wooden bird is doing well? Isn't it divine? It's really amazing. If it were in the past, Yun Xiao might be eager to dismantle and study that little wooden bird now, but not today. She stuffed the small wooden bird into her sleeve pocket in front of the king of Yan, which was a blatant intention of confiscating it. The king of Yan eagerly watched as the little wooden bird, which had been studying for a long time and finally succeeded once, changed its course under his own nose. On the one hand, I am happy that my daughter likes this thing, but on the other hand, I feel a bit sore. He hesitated and opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something. However, Yun Xiao had already taken the lead in speaking. Dad, can we talk about it? The king of Yan was taken aback for a moment, only then did he notice that Yun Xiao's state today seemed somewhat off. He smiled faintly and looked at Yun Xiao in silence for a moment before finally sighing lightly. Go inside and talk. With just these 4 words, Yun Xiao knows, her father seems to only know how to knock and knock in the Xiamu garden every day, but in fact, many things are clear in his mind. Her father, as long as he's not a fool, will definitely be wary of the dog emperor. Or is this matter not as difficult to break through as she imagined? Unconsciously, his right hand touched the small wooden bird in his left sleeve pocket. Yun Xiao followed behind Yun Hongqing and walked into his room filled with drawings. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Going to the Imperial Academy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Going to the Imperial Academy 3 days later. Yun Xiao was studying the small wooden bird blueprint she had received from her father in the study when she suddenly heard a somewhat noisy sound coming from outside. Not long after, Yun Fengxing rushed in from outside, and his voice arrived before anyone else. Brother, you have to go to the Imperial Academy with me tomorrow. He was dressed in a crisp and neat lake blue riding suit, with his black hair casually tied around a high ponytail with a jade crown, and a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. At first glance, it looks like it just came back from being wild outside. Yun Xiao put down the thin wooden piece in his hand and raised his eyebrows lightly. Is this because there have been too many instances of skipping classes, and the teachers of the Imperial Academy finally can't bear to watch it? How could it be? If it's really that kind of nagging thing, I'll let our dad go. Yun Feng chuckled twice, picked up the teapot in her study, and poured herself a cup. That unremarkable appearance is just like Yun Xiao's. After drinking 3 large cups of tea in one breath, Yun Feng casually wiped his mouth and explained. Yesterday, the envoys from Xiling and Bailey arrived in the capital. The emperor received them after the morning court today. What did the sixth prince, who came with the envoy from Shiling's side, say? I heard that there are many young talents in our dashing, and I want to go to the Imperial Academy to have a long experience. After listening, the Prince of Bailey also said he wanted to go and see. The Emperor is accurate. However, it is rumored that among the envoys who came to Xiling this time, besides the sixth prince, there was also a young man with exceptional talent and learning. The Emperor is probably also afraid that the sixth prince will suddenly have a talent competition tomorrow. If the students of the Imperial Academy lose, it will cause embarrassment to Desheng, so there's an excuse to say that in order for the sixth prince to see more young talents, order that the children of nobles and nobles who have reached the age of 15 and have already left the Imperial Academy, but have not yet reached the weak crown, must go to the Imperial Academy tomorrow to show their faces. I estimate the oral edict will arrive soon. As if to prove his last sentence, almost as soon as Yunfeng finished speaking, Xian's voice came from outside. Crown Prince, Second Prince, the Rong Gonggong next to your Majesty has arrived in the front hall and said he is here to deliver your Majesty's orders. Got it. Yun Xiao gave a faint response, got up and walked out, while also lifting his hand lightly to give Yunfeng a thought. Knowing that Duke Rong is coming to deliver an edict, why don't you hurry up and change your clothes? Although the oral edict may not be as formal as the imperial edict, if Yunfeng really went to the front hall with her to receive the oral edict, the emperor would not pursue any good intentions. If we really want to investigate, it would be disrespectful and disrespectful. Bombing Yunfeng back into his own yard to tidy up and change clothes, Yun Xiao led Ziyin to the front hall first. From a long distance, you can see the figure that is holding up the crimson eunuch uniform in a round and round shape. Yun Xiao smiled at the corner of his lips and stepped forward in a loud voice. My yard is a bit far from this front hall, making Grandpa Rome wait for a long time. What is Prince Yun saying? Don't ruin our family. Grandpa Rome, who was drinking tea, saw Yun Xiao enter the door and quickly put down the tea cup in his hand and stood up. In those eyes that looked cheerful and approachable, a complex color that was hard to detect quickly flashed by. He smiled and glanced behind Yun Xiao. I don't know if the second young master of the mansion Offeng is mischievous. He went crazy and played around for a long time today. He just came back not long ago. I asked him to change his clothes first before coming over. Grandpa Lao Rong waited a little longer. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. There are not many moves, just use them effectively. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. There are not many moves, just use them effectively. Yun Xiao spoke politely, but his posture and tone were calm and casual. It's like standing in front of oneself is just an elder who has a close relationship, rather than a eunuch who even the Empress Dowager of the Central Palace pays homage to and gives 3/4 of respect to the emperor. Grandpa Rong didn't think anything was wrong either. After all, the Holy Emperor Mingmian'er still dotes on Yun Xiao, the crown prince of the Yan prince's mansion, today. She was shouting casually in front of the emperor, one uncle after another, no matter how powerful Gonggong Rong is, he can still surpass his majesty. Moreover, Prince Yun's inner skin is usually a bit rough, but his temperament is really likable. Even the most rigid and serious sacrificial wine in the Imperial Academy, when it comes to Yun Xiao, is both love and hate. Rong Gonggong naturally cannot avoid vulgarity. He not only didn't mind Yun Xiao's casual behavior, but also felt immensely benefited. Just, the tea and dim sum in Lord Yan's residence are not ordinary. Of course, we are willing to wait for the second young master. Unfortunately, your majesty still needs our family to go back and serve as soon as possible, but there aren't many left. Moreover, the second young master was also a student of the Imperial Academy. When it comes to this edict today, it is actually only for you, the Crown Prince Yun of the mansion. After politely refusing Yun Zhao's request to stay and wait for Yun Feng's words, Duke Rong hesitated for a moment, as if he had something to say to Yun Xiao, but in the end, he still didn't speak up. The next morning, Yun Xiao, who had not slept in Maoshi for a long time, was still pulled out of bed by her close maid Dong Yun. At that time, it was not yet dawn. Xiao, who had not slept the day before, could hardly even open his eyes. She shrank into the bed, clutching the blanket in a daze, unwilling to let go. There was still a hint of hoarseness in the drowsy voice. "Don't make a fuss, I'll sleep a little longer. It's already getting late. If you don't get up again, you won't be able to catch up with the early classes at the Imperial Academy." Dong Yun reluctantly grabbed the other end of the blanket and engaged in a game with Xiao. She grew up with Xiao from a young age, and as the only person in this mansion besides the King of Yen and the Queen of Yen who knew about Xiao's daughter, over the years, Xiao has been solely responsible for her daily routine. 2 years ago, when Xiao had not yet finished his studies at the Imperial Academy, waking up in the morning had always been a difficult task. She can handle it easily and is already familiar with the road. He forcefully pulled the person with the blanket to the edge of the bed, and Dong Yun bent down to pick up Xiao, who was still closed and wanted to continue sleeping, swiftly groomed her. Then he leaned over to Xiao, who was still half asleep and half awake, and whispered softly. "Prince, if you don't wake up again, I will have to change your clothes for you." Xiao suddenly opened his eyes and saw the face of Dong Yun, who was pursing her lips and giggling, unable to help but let out her guard. She lay back somewhat helplessly and began to accuse her weakly. "Dong Yun, how many years have you been using this move? There aren't many moves, just use them." Dong Yun tidied up the items at hand and stood up with a smile as she walked out. "I'll wait outside the door. After a cup of tea, I'll come in and tie your hair." When she said these words, she didn't worry at all that Xiao would fall asleep again after she left. After all, Crown Prince Yun is shy and tight. She has never been involved in bathing or changing clothes. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. You Are the Corrupt People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. You Are the Corrupt People. As expected, when Dong Yun returned to the room after waiting for a cup of tea outside, Xiao had already changed into a silver-white straight-cut robe. The fabric with excellent drape over her body further accentuates the slender and thin figure of the young man. On the wide waistband with the moon-white auspicious cloud pattern, there is also a high-quality ink jade pendant hanging. This dress is not perfunctory at all. The person who had just changed into this outfit seemed to have exhausted the little energy she had just accumulated after waking up, and now lazily lay back in her warm big bed, without the demeanor that a handsome young master should have. Dong Yun shook his head helplessly and turned to walk to the dowry. His gaze swept lightly over the neatly arranged rows of hair crowns and hairpins in front of him, and finally landed on a silver ribbon of the same color as Xiao's clothes. She reached out her hand and picked up the silver ribbon. "Crown Prince, it's time to tie your hair. Tisk, could you please?" After tinkering around for a while, Xiao had already fully regained consciousness. However, feeling that his body was still weak, he reluctantly stood up and sat down on the chair, casually asking. "Has Afeng ever been here?" "The second young master came before the time of Mao, but you were not awake yet, and the second young master could only leave first." Dong Yun's nimble fingers pierced through Xiao's silky hair, pulling a strand of black hair from both sides of her ear towards the middle, and then carefully tied it with the silver ribbon she had previously chosen. After scrutinizing it carefully for a while, I finally pushed aside half a step with satisfaction. "Okay. The pastry maid has also been taken to the carriage by Zine. If you go out now, ask Zine to hurry up the carriage a bit. It should just be able to catch the morning class. It's okay if we can't catch up." Xiao lazily yawned and slowly stood up to walk out. As long as there is no problem with the prince's minds in Shilling and Bailey, they will not be bored enough to even bother with morning classes. What is morning class? It is nothing more than to review the content learned before. A group of people sat in their respective positions, shaking their heads, carrying those useless things on their backs. Even the more powerful masters wouldn't appear at this time. If the people of Xiling and Bailey really just want to try the abilities of the aristocratic children of the dashing prince, there is really no need to make trouble of running to the Guozijian before dawn to listen to someone's endorsement. Specially instructed Xin to slow down the speed of the carriage, Yun Shaoan sat steadily in the carriage, finished the pastry, and then leaned on the soft cushion to close his eyes and rest for a while. She thought that when she arrived at the Imperial Academy, she would definitely hear the sound of Lang Lang reading. However, say it again. Who is the barbarian? Did I not apologize for accidentally hitting you? Besides, I just lightly bumped into it. Even if it were a 3-year-old child today, there wouldn't be any problem. He's good. Make it look like I stabbed him. You are blatantly corrupt people. The familiar voice came from the inner courtyard of the Imperial Academy, and Yun Xiao, who was originally still closing his eyes and recuperating, suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, the carriage under me had just come to a stop. Without waiting for Xin to turn around and help her put down the horse stool, Yun Xiao lifted the curtain and quickly jumped off the carriage. At the same time, a voice even more arrogant than Yun Feng followed closely in the inner courtyard. Joke, I am the 6th prince of the Western Ling, and I still want to falsely accuse you of being a barbarian. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. What does the 6th prince want? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. What does the 6th prince want? After all, it is a place specifically designed for the children of nobles and nobles to study, and the Guozijian covers a very wide area. Even if the place where Yun Xiao got off the carriage was just a side door near the inner courtyard, the moment she walked in from outside was still enough to escalate the conflict between Yun Feng and Prince Xiling from a verbal dispute to a level that was about to erupt. Just say you're weak. What's wrong with you? My daughters in the prosperous boudoir are not as delicate as you. You damn barbarian. Believe it or not, this prince. 6th prince, calm down. There was also a mistake in the matter just now, and besides, this young master has indeed apologized. The voices from all sides intertwined in the inner courtyard, making it feel chaotic just by listening. When Yun Xiao walked in, the first thing he saw was an arrogant young man with a golden complexion all over his body, wishing he could just engrave the 4 big characters, "I'm rich," on his face, glaring angrily at Yun Feng. Next to him was a man dressed in white, wearing a thick cloak in spring, and full of illness, weakness, and noble childishness. He tried to dissuade the arrogant young man and try to smooth the situation. After coaxing the arrogant young man, I still remember to apologize to Yun Feng again. I have never been well below, and the 6th prince was too worried to misunderstand. Please forgive me, young master. Compared to the arrogant 6th prince of Xiling, this sickly young man's attitude is simply not too good. Yun Feng himself is not an unreasonable person, and besides, he accidentally bumped into someone while walking before. Seeing everyone apologizing at the moment, he took the opportunity to respond. Unexpectedly, Prince Xiling's anger grew even stronger when he saw the sick and weak young man apologizing. Chu Long, why do you apologize? I'm telling you, you just have such a good temper. If a barbarian like him were to be in my Western Ling, my prince would definitely make him unable to eat and walk around. Do you still know that this is not your Xiling? I tell you, you. Halfway through Yun Feng's trembling words, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. As if he had found his backbone, the previous ferocity and hardness dissipated completely in an instant. He strode up to Yun Xiao and skillfully began to tell the truth by pulling her sleeve, as if he was being bullied outside and hoping his brother could help him find a place. Brother, you finally arrived. This Prince Xiling is jealous of my strength and even wants to deceive me. Oh. Yun Xiao walked in all the way from outside, which can be considered as a rough understanding of the whole process. She comfortingly patted Yun Feng's arm with a folding fan. With a casual glance and a curled lip, he expressed his attitude of maintaining Yun Feng clearly and clearly. I don't know what the 6th prince wants. Are you this barbaric kid's brother? Prince Xiling returned arrogantly, but he was not completely brainless. When he had a dispute with Yun Feng before, he heard someone mention his identity. In this way, it is not difficult to guess who Yun Xiao is. His status as the sixth prince of Xiling is indeed prestigious, but the legitimate eldest son of the great prince of Yen is also equally impressive. If he rashly asks the other party to kneel and apologize, Yun Xiao will definitely not agree. If there is a big uproar in the end, it may even escalate into a conflict between the two countries. But if he had just lightly exposed it, he would feel embarrassed again. End of this chapter.